Now, the saying goes that necessity is the mother of invention. That simple saying just means that we typically don't make or do something new unless we need to make or do something new. That kind of makes sense. Very rarely do our minds think of something new out of the blue. Our minds work in a way that builds one thing upon another. Think about it. That is how our education works. In math, or maths for our British brethren, it is hard to understand multiplication and division unless you understand addition and subtraction. Our minds build on the information that we have already processed and implemented. It's the same in science, in art, in music, in everything, especially in our creative endeavors. Now, we talk a lot about creativity here. In fact, that is the purpose of this channel, to inspire the God-given creative nature within us all. We have a pretty specific way of looking at and defining creativity, and we have a video all about that where we talk all through creativity. And I'll drop a card and a link for that video for you to check out. But to sum that up a bit for this video, the way I like to think about creativity is that we possess God-given skills, talents, and abilities, and we nurture those skills, talents, and abilities, gaining creative wisdom and knowledge over the years. When we use those skills, talents, and abilities to solve a problem, the result is the process of creativity. When things go off the rails, sometimes great creative things come out of that because our minds figure out a way to build something new on the foundation of what we have already implemented. That process is ingenuity. And ingenuity is simply the skill or cleverness in devising or combining things. So let's talk about creative ingenuity. Definitions aside, ingenuity is what happens when you hit a snag while using your skills, talents, and abilities to solve a creative problem. So what are some of those snags? Well, broken tools or wrong tools could be a snag. I always think about NASA and the Apollo 13 mission, having to take the limited items that they had on hand in the middle of space to build a thing that they needed to stay alive long enough to make it back to Earth, having to develop a new process to do a thing that the right tool would make easy, and that requires ingenuity. Laziness or frustration in a long process could be a snag. For instance, the engineers at Abbey Road Studios came up with a new way of artificially doubling a vocal because the Beatles were annoyed with the process and time required to manually double their vocals. And engineers and artists today still use that process and technology to avoid the long and boring process of doubling vocals. Although, in my opinion, doing the hard work of manually doubling the vocals just sounds better. But this is not about doubling vocals. A limitation of time or resources for a creative endeavor could also be a snag. When we feel the time crunch in our creative process, we sometimes need to devise new ways, quicker ways of making a thing happen. To be honest, there are so many examples of this in history. The creative ingenuity that it was required to break the secret codes in World War II, going back to NASA for this example, the ingenuity to put men on the moon in the 1960s with no supercomputers. They did that with slide rules, primitive computers, and hard work. Amazing. That is ingenuity. A mistake in the process that you can't undo is a snag. And it seems to only happen when the process is long and relatively unrepeatable. I have seen really creative video edits on long-form video projects because one camera's battery died or none of the camera ops had a shot that could be used. That edit requires ingenuity. And when there is a change in the scope or direction of a project midstream, that is a big snag. But it is the one snag that you can always count on. But it is the place where we can use our ingenuity most often. Now, it is not always a bad thing when we have these snags in our creative endeavors. Sometimes that snag allows a greater creative expression to happen. Without the ingenuity that our God-given creative minds have produced, imagine what we would not have today. To be honest, I don't think that we can even fathom a world where ingenuity does not happen. And rightly so. We were intelligently designed by God to be like Him. And as He has and continues to create and build everything in existence, we have been given the capacity, although in a somewhat inferior fashion, to do the same. See, our capacity to use creative ingenuity is a gift from God, and our capacity for ingenuity is a direct result of developing the skills, talents, and abilities that we have been given. So, how do you approach your creative endeavors when you hit a snag? Is your response creative ingenuity, or do you feel frustration and lose interest? Now, although moving on can be the right response, my hope is that you persevere and find a solution for the snag. The more that we use our creative abilities in both non-artistic and artistic ways, the more we have the opportunity and ability to innovate and use the God-given ingenuity that we all have to go, create, and be a blessing. You can support our channel by subscribing, hitting that bell icon to get notified when new content comes out, and liking our videos. If you'd like to consider supporting our team financially, there's a link in the video description with more details. Those things will help our channel for sure, but if you do nothing else, please spend some time in the comments of our videos encouraging one another to create, to help others create, and to help grow that creative nature within us all. Oh, and you can check out these videos too. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.